What happens when a legendary Hollywood actor, with decades of fame and 2 Oscars under his belt, goes head-to-head with a 27-year-old Gen Z woman on live television and ends up looking like the underdog? This wasn't a movie scene. This wasn't scripted. This was real, raw, and broadcast live in front of millions. And what happened next had the internet shaking. Tonight, I'm taking you behind the scenes of the now viral face-off between Robert De Niro, the Hollywood icon, the anti-Trump firebrand, and Caroline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in U.S. history and an unflinching Trump loyalist. He came ready to dominate. He called her a puppet, mocked her faith, and wrote her off as just a kid. But Caroline? She didn't just clap back. She turned the stage into a battlefield and walked away with a mic drop moment that shattered De Niro's entire performance. If you think this is just another political debate, you're in for a surprise. But before we dive into this wild story, I want to hear from you. Comment down below, where in the world are you watching from? Let's light up this comment section and see how far this channel's community reaches. And hey, if you love real stories with high drama, power shifts, and the kind of moments that leave people speechless, you're in the right place. Tap that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss when we drop the next chapter in these powerful untold stories. Let's grow this community together. And now, let's get into the heat of the action. It all happened on a tense night in the Fox News studio. Cameras rolling, stage lights blazing, audience buzzing. Hannity was hosting the segment, and both sides of the political spectrum were tuned in, ready for fireworks. On one side, Robert De Niro, 81 years old, a man who's played mob bosses, gangsters, legends. He's known for his roles, but even more for his sharp, unforgiving political commentary in recent years. He's loud, he's opinionated, and tonight he had a target, Caroline Leavitt. On the other side, Caroline, just 27, petite in stature but towering in presence, dressed in a deep blue tailored suit, hair pulled back, eyes full of fire. She wasn't just here to defend Trump. She was here to prove that age doesn't equal authority. But just before she stepped out, De Niro took the mic and lit the match. Donald Trump is the biggest disaster America has ever seen. And Caroline Leavitt? She's his puppet. A Gen Z mouthpiece who only knows how to read whatever script Trump hands her. The crowd exploded. The liberal corner of the audience clapped wildly. MAGA supporters whistled and booed. The temperature in the room rose instantly. De Niro wasn't holding back. He leaned forward, his hand raised like he was on Broadway, and sneered into the camera. He mocked her youth. He mocked her faith. He mocked her entire presence, as if this 27-year-old had no business being on the same stage as a legend like him. "I've played gangsters in movies," he said, "but Trump's the real gangster. And Caroline? She's just his lackey." Phones came out. People started recording. The moment was already beginning to spread online before the debate even began. But while all of that was happening, backstage, Caroline Leavitt was listening. And she wasn't trembling. She wasn't backing down. She was getting ready. Her team handed her an iPad, an old clip of De Niro praising Obama back in 2016. That was the ammo. That was her opening punch. She looked into the mirror one last time, took a breath, and then she stepped onto the stage. The ad break ended. Hannity raised a hand to introduce her. Here's Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, and someone who's not afraid to face Robert De Niro head-on. And just like that, the crowd went wild. Thunderous claps from the right, mocking whistles from the left. But Caroline? She walked out like she owned the studio. With high heels clicking across the floor and eyes locked on De Niro, she gripped the mic. And what she said next would flip the night on its head. The music faded. The lights intensified, and standing center stage now was Caroline Leavitt. She didn't walk out timidly. She walked out like she was ready for war. Her sharp blue suit caught the light just right. Her posture straight, her heels clicking like punctuation marks with every step. She gripped the mic, looked directly at Robert De Niro, and didn't blink once. "Mr. De Niro," she began, her voice steady and cutting through the air like a blade, "I heard everything you just said." The room hushed instantly. Even Hannity leaned back in his chair as if sensing the shift. De Niro smirked like he was preparing to toy with her. But that smirk wouldn't last long. "Gen Z puppet?" Clueless kid, she continued, her voice rising in strength. You think you can stand there with your 2 Oscars and your Goodfellas tone and humiliate me and President Trump in front of the nation? She paused for just a beat, then delivered it. You're wrong. The crowd stirred. Phones went up. People leaned forward. You say I'm a puppet, she said, her tone sharpening. But have you looked in the mirror, Mr. De Niro? Then she made her move. She raised a hand to signal production. The giant screen behind them lit up, and there it was, an old clip of De Niro on CNN from 2016, sitting in a gray suit, smiling. I like how Obama handles things, De Niro said on screen. He's smart, he's got vision. The clip froze mid-sentence. Caroline turned back to him, a spark in her eyes. That's you, she said. That's you praising Obama, the same man whose policies Trump reversed to give millions of Americans their jobs, their borders, and their pride back. She stepped forward. So tell me, who's the hypocrite now? The studio exploded. MAGA supporters clapped and shouted. Even some people on the liberal side couldn't help but nod. De Niro's face tightened. He tried to speak, but Caroline cut him off cold. I'm not done. He leaned back, almost stunned. You stood outside Trump's courthouse and called him a malignant narcissist. Fine. But what about you? She said. A Hollywood millionaire, living in luxury, owning restaurants, starring in flops like The Alto Nights. And you want to talk about failure? That hit hard. Some in the audience burst out laughing. The name drop stung. She had clearly come prepared, and she wasn't pulling punches. You've made your entire career pretending to be tough. I don't have to act. I live this. The MAGA crowd started chanting again. Caroline! Caroline! De Niro shifted in his seat. His smirk was gone now, replaced by something else. Discomfort. You mocked my faith, she said, now speaking slower, firmer. You joked that I prayed a cover for Trump. You laughed like prayer is something weak. She stared straight at him. I don't pray to cover for anyone. I pray for strength. Strength to face people like you. Strength to stay true to what I believe in, even when people like you come at me with smugness and slander. A silence spread over the room. Strength, she said again, that doesn't come from awards or money. Strength that doesn't come from scripts. The crowd was glued to her now. Hannity said nothing. Cameras zoomed in. You want the unedited truth? She asked. Here it is. Donald Trump won because the people chose him. Not actors, not elites, and certainly not you. I'm 27, she added. And I've worked for him since college. I've earned this. I've fought for this. And today I didn't come here to defend myself. I came here to show you that I'm not a puppet. I'm a voice for the millions of Americans you dismiss every time you speak. She stared at him again. And you, she said, her voice soft but deadly, you're done. The crowd roared. Hannity looked like he didn't know whether to clap or just sit in awe. De Niro jolted up in his chair, pointed at her, and shouted, You think you're clever, huh? I fought bigger than you my whole life. But his voice wavered. He was yelling, but it didn't land. Caroline didn't flinch. She just tilted her head slightly and replied, calm as ever, Then today, you lost to someone smaller. Game over. The audience erupted again. Phones flew up. Clips were already being posted to X. De Niro slumped back in his chair, his face red, his hands shaking slightly on the armrests. And Caroline? She just stood there, mic still in hand, letting the silence fall around her like victory. She didn't just win the debate. She owned the moment. And every second of it was now racing across the internet. Before we get back into the action, make sure you've subscribed and clicked the notification bell so you never miss when we drop a story like this. These aren't just moments. These are cultural showdowns, and you don't want to be late when the next one breaks. Drop a comment right now and tell me, Team Leavitt or Team De Niro? I'm reading every single one. All right, let's get back to the fire. As the final echo of applause faded and the energy in the studio simmered, Robert De Niro sat frozen. The man who once commanded film sets with a single look now looked stunned. His hands gripped the sides of his chair like he was trying to steady himself. His jaw was tight, his signature smirk gone. Hannity leaned forward, almost laughing at how quickly the night had shifted. Bob, he said, trying to cut the tension, she brought receipts. How do you answer that clip? De Niro turned toward the now black screen where his old CNN interview had just exposed him. He pointed at it, shrugged, and muttered, So what? I can change my mind. Then he added louder, I'm not a puppet like her. She just reads Trump's script word for word. But it didn't land. Someone in the audience shouted, "You're really done now, Bobby." Laughter broke out again, louder this time, more confident. The control had slipped and De Niro was trying to claw it back with nothing but wounded pride. Caroline leaned forward, still calm, but with that same glint of fire in her eyes. "You want to talk about scripts?" she said. "I don't need anyone to write my words." She paused and then delivered the knockout. "But what about you, Mr. De Niro? You've lived off scripts your entire life. From The Godfather to The Irishman, every word you've ever said was written for you." The crowd exploded. That one stung. He was an actor, a performer. She was making it clear, in this moment, he was out of his element. "I'm here," she continued, "because I believe in what I say. I don't need a character. I don't need a director. I don't need Hollywood." De Niro was red in the face now. He grabbed the mic, visibly trembling. "Don't get cocky with me," he snapped. "I built my career from nothing, from Little Italy, not because of Trump, not because of Fox News. I've got films. What do you have besides a mouth reading his orders?" But his voice cracked near the end. The words came out, but they didn't hit. The MAGA side of the audience booed him down. Someone yelled, "The Alto Knights lost 40 million, Bob." Hannity laughed out loud. "Caroline, you've got him fired up now." De Niro turned to Hannity, almost desperate. "She's not firing me up. She's just arrogant. I've been fighting Trump since she was in diapers." "And what do you think she's been doing?" Hannity replied, smirking. But Caroline wasn't finished. "I pray for strength, Mr. De Niro," she said softly. "What do you pray for? Because judging by the Alto Knights, you might want to start." The room roared with laughter. Some people actually stood up to clap. De Niro took a step back, his face blank. And then, in one of the most surreal moments of the night, he dropped the mic on the desk and just stared. Then came the commercial break. But even in those few minutes, the drama didn't slow down. Phones were out, tweets were being fired off, clips were being posted. As the lights came back up, De Niro was still trying to recover. "I'm not done," he muttered. His voice was low, but the mic still picked it up. He looked across at Caroline, his glare sharp, but his confidence shaken. "You want to play this game?" he said. "Fine, I'll show the country who you are, a childish opportunist." But even as he spoke, his voice shook. He tried to sound strong, but it came off like he was trying to convince himself more than the audience. Hannity shrugged. "Bob," he said, "she scored points. You gotta admit that." De Niro went quiet for a long second. Then he mumbled, "I don't need to turn it around. I'm Robert De Niro, and she's nothing." But the audience didn't believe him anymore. Caroline sat coolly across from him, legs crossed, calm, her eyes steady. She didn't even flinch. He could call her nothing all he wanted, but everyone watching had already decided otherwise. And then the cameras cut. The moment the segment ended, De Niro stormed off the set. His team followed, scrambling behind him, trying to catch up. He didn't speak to anyone. He just walked fast, jaw tight, rage in his eyes. He climbed into the black SUV waiting outside, slammed the door shut, yanked out his phone, and started typing. The tweet went up within minutes. "Caroline Leavitt is arrogant, but Trump is still the biggest danger. I didn't lose tonight. I spoke truth." But the replies were brutal. The first one? "You lost, Bob. Go retire." Another reply? A meme of De Niro red-faced at the desk, captioned, "When you think you're a good fella, but Gen Z makes you look like an extra." The internet had spoken. De Niro's meltdown was officially viral. And Caroline? She didn't just win the debate. She walked off the stage as the face of a new movement. And trust me, it only gets crazier from here. As soon as the studio lights dimmed and the Fox News cameras powered down, the real battle shifted online, and it was immediate. Within seconds of that final moment, Caroline Leavitt's mic drop, "You're done, Mr. De Niro." Social media platforms lit up like a digital wildfire. Fox News wasted no time. Their production team clipped the most brutal parts of the exchange. The Obama praise throwback, the "I don't need scripts" comeback, the Alto Knights burn, and uploaded it to X, Instagram, and YouTube almost instantly. And just like that, a hashtag was born, #LeavittBeatsDe Niro. It took less than 3 minutes to start trending. 15 minutes later, it was #1 in the US. Across X, Trump supporters were celebrating like it was the 4th of July. One user with over 500,000 followers tweeted, Caroline Leavitt just knocked out De Niro, Gen Z 1, Hollywood 0. Another MAGA account posted a side-by-side of Caroline at the mic and De Niro slumping in his chair, captioned, "When you realize the script didn't help this time, Bob." The memes came in fast, and they came in savage. One of the most viral images showed De Niro's red, flustered face next to a screen grab of his 2016 CNN interview, with the caption, "From Obama's got vision to I got wrecked on live TV in under 10 years. Another video edit paired Leavitt's line, "You live in luxury mansions," with De Niro's stunned silence from The Irishman cut in slow motion. It hit over 200,000 views in the first hour. And then came the nickname, Killer Caroline. It started in a tweet. Trump didn't pick her for show. He picked her because she's a fighter. Killer Caroline just took out a Hollywood legend. It stuck. Hard. Within an hour, thousands were using the moniker. People were creating fan edits, clips, TikToks. Conservative influencers jumped in fast. Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec, Breitbart, even the Daily Wire, all hailed her as the new voice of Gen Z conservatism. One Daily Wire headline read, "Killer Caroline silences De Niro on Hannity stage. Gen Z has entered the arena." Even Hannity reposted a clip of the moment with the caption, "She came with receipts and left with the win." But while the right was cheering, the left was in chaos. De Niro's fans tried to push back, tweeting things like, "She's just a trained mouthpiece. This was staged for Trump." De Niro's still a legend, but even some of his own supporters had to admit, the night didn't go his way. One tweet read, "I love Bob, but he got smoked. She was too sharp. He couldn't keep up." And that's when the internet's full honesty kicked in. Some fans posted memes of De Niro talking to himself in Taxi Driver. "You talking to me? Yeah, and you lost." The burn was real. The sentiment was everywhere. Even people who wanted to be on De Niro's side couldn't pretend he'd won. And it wasn't just random internet users saying this. Mainstream media jumped in. Fox News called the moment a generational shift in the conservative movement. Leavitt didn't just defend Trump, she made De Niro an example. A commentator on Fox and Friends said, "She walked into a lion's den, and instead of being eaten alive, she took the lion's head." Even liberal outlets had to admit defeat, reluctantly. CNN ran a segment the next morning called De Niro's Unscripted Flop. Did he underestimate Gen Z? One Variety article said, "De Niro underestimated her. That 2016 clip, a perfect, painful counterstrike." And then came Trump's tweet. Just hours after the segment aired, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, "Caroline Leavitt was fantastic tonight. She exposed Robert De Niro and the fake Hollywood crowd for what they are. All talk, no substance. Very proud." That single post cemented it. Caroline Leavitt wasn't just a press secretary anymore. She was made in the MAGA world. Inside the White House, sources told Fox that Trump's inner circle was buzzing. Even former skeptics, people like Stephen Miller and Kayleigh McEnany, had to admit she had delivered. She didn't just survive the hit, one insider reportedly said, she flipped it and fired it back harder. By the next day, Caroline's press briefings were packed. Reporters weren't just asking about policy anymore, they wanted to talk about what had just happened on that stage. And she handled it with ease. "I've faced De Niro," she smiled. "These questions don't faze me." That smile? It wasn't arrogance. It was earned. She had walked into one of the most high-pressure, high-profile debates on national TV and walked out with a moment that would live on the internet forever. Caroline Leavitt had just become a symbol, a Gen Z star for the MAGA base. And Robert De Niro? He was no longer the untouchable voice of anti-Trump Hollywood. He was just the guy who got torched on Fox News by a 27-year-old who never flinched. And we're not even done yet. Because in the next part of this story, we'll dive into how this moment reshaped both of their reputations, and why some people are saying De Niro's meltdown was the beginning of the end of Hollywood's dominance in political debates. Make sure you're subscribed. Click the notification bell. Because this is no longer just a moment. This is a shift. And you don't want to miss what happens next. The next morning, headlines were everywhere. Social media hadn't cooled off overnight. It had only gotten hotter. And while Caroline Leavitt was being celebrated as a new conservative warrior, Robert De Niro was waking up to what some were calling the biggest public flop of his career. It wasn't just Fox News pushing the story anymore. Variety dropped a headline that read, "De Niro's rare flop. Blindsided by Gen Z on live TV." Their review didn't hold back. De Niro came in overconfident, thinking his legacy would be enough. But Leavitt wasn't reading from a script. She was writing her own. That line alone went viral. Over on The Atlantic, a think piece questioned whether De Niro's aggressive political persona had finally hit a wall. At 81 years old, has Robert De Niro lost his edge in modern media warfare? He was once Hollywood's untouchable anti-Trump voice, but last night he looked like a relic. And people weren't just talking politics, they were talking reputation. One comment on X summed up the vibe perfectly. De Niro's legacy didn't collapse, but it took a big scratch. She got under his skin and made him look like the villain in a script he didn't write. Ouch. Even some of De Niro's die-hard fans couldn't defend the performance. A user tweeted, "I've loved Bob my whole life, but he underestimated her. Badly. She was smart, sharp, and came loaded. That wasn't just a win, that was domination." And that's exactly what happened. Caroline didn't just win a debate. She dominated a space that traditionally belonged to the elite, and she did it on their turf. It was no longer about party lines. It was about performance, preparation, presence, and Caroline had all three. One of the most shared memes at this point showed a still frame of De Niro mid-rant, red-faced, finger-pointed, paired with the words, "You talking to me? Yeah. And she still beat you." Meanwhile, The Alto Nights, De Niro's recent box office bomb, became the punchline of every other post. 40 million down the drain and now this? Retire, Bob, one tweet read, with 80,000 likes. Some critics took it even further. A podcast host commented, he mocked her for her faith, her age, her beliefs, and she didn't flinch. She turned every insult into a weapon and used his own history to shut him down. That wasn't a debate. That was a strategic strike. And that's exactly what separated Caroline from the average talking head. She was prepared. She came in knowing the opponent. She brought research, she brought attitude, she brought faith, and most importantly, she brought receipts. That's what made the difference. For De Niro, the damage control began almost immediately. The morning after the debate, he appeared on CNN for a follow-up interview, visibly frustrated. "She's arrogant," he repeated. "But Trump's still the danger." That hasn't changed. But the fire just wasn't there anymore. He wasn't angry. He looked tired. He wasn't commanding. He was defensive. The host tried to throw him a lifeline. "Do you think it was unfair?" "No," he admitted. She got her shots in." And with that, even his supporters had to admit, it was over. The energy was gone. The momentum was lost. And Caroline? She was everywhere. Fox News panels were already calling her the new face of conservative Gen Z. Breitbart ran a glowing editorial. She did what most veteran politicians wouldn't dare. Took on De Niro in front of millions and won. Charlie Kirk tweeted, "Caroline Leavitt is the future. Youth, faith, backbone. That's how we win." And across conservative media, the story was now about more than just the debate. It was about the passing of the torch. Because in a world where age once commanded automatic respect, Caroline proved something different. Preparation beats prestige. Conviction beats celebrity. And authenticity? It beats everything. Inside the White House, the mood was celebratory. Trump's inner circle was already floating ideas about promoting Caroline to a more visible role. Some even whispered about future Senate runs or campaign leadership. She wasn't just a spokesperson anymore. She was becoming a political brand. And that's what made this moment more than just a viral clip. It was a shift, one that proved the new generation of conservative voices weren't here to be polite. They weren't waiting their turn. And they certainly weren't intimidated by a Hollywood name. Caroline didn't walk onto that stage to defend Trump. She walked on to show that Gen Z can lead, will fight, and knows how to win, even in a world that keeps underestimating them. De Niro thought he was entering a debate. He ended up in a battle he wasn't ready for. And the country watched it happen live. The clip didn't just go viral, it didn't just trend, it exploded, and it lasted. What started as a heated TV exchange between an 81-year-old Hollywood icon and a 27-year-old press secretary turned into a national flashpoint, a moment that didn't just entertain, it revealed something real about where America is right now. By the end of the week, political analysts weren't just talking about the performance. They were talking about the power shift. Caroline Leavitt, once the quiet Gen Z voice working behind the scenes, was now being called the next generation's megaphone. She didn't just prove she belonged on that stage, she proved she could own it. And for Robert De Niro, the moment marked something he hadn't experienced in a long time. A loss. He wasn't canceled. His career didn't vanish. He still had the Oscars, the box office hits, the decades of legacy. But that night on Fox News, he was outplayed, outmaneuvered, and outsmarted by someone who wasn't even alive when Goodfellas was released. And that matters, because in today's America, fame doesn't protect you from facts. Legacy doesn't shield you from receipts. And if you come unprepared, even with decades of experience, you can be dismantled in minutes by someone who's hungry, focused, and sharp. That's what Caroline brought to the table. And that's why this wasn't just a moment. It was a snapshot of a changing country. A country where media, politics, and culture no longer bow to the old guard by default. Where Gen Z doesn't just consume headlines, they create them. And where the fight for truth is no longer just happening on debate stages, it's happening on TikTok, on X, on live streams, in the comment section, and in the minds of millions watching at home. Caroline didn't just defend Trump. She embodied a new conservative generation, one that isn't afraid to confront the elites, one that doesn't back down when mocked, one that still believes in faith, family, and fierce preparation, and brings it all to the battlefield of media with no script needed. And De Niro? He became the example. He became the reminder that no matter how famous you are, no matter how many awards you've won or how many decades you've been in the spotlight, if you walk into the arena unready and underestimate your opponent, you will lose. He mocked her for being 27. She made him wish he hadn't. He laughed at her faith. She used it as her fuel. He called her a puppet. She pulled the strings and turned the show into her own performance. And here's what that teaches all of us, whether you're in politics, business, or just navigating your own life. Don't underestimate anyone. Don't rely on your past to protect your present. And when you're challenged, come prepared, come focused, and come with truth. That's how Caroline won. She didn't yell. She didn't lose her cool. She studied her opponent, watched his patterns, found the cracks, and struck with precision. That's the blueprint for every future voice trying to rise in a loud, noisy world. And now, the question isn't just what happens next for Caroline, it's who will step up next to challenge her. Because after this viral moment, she's not just a press secretary anymore. She's not just a Gen Z voice. She's Killer Caroline, the name the internet gave her, the brand the media can't ignore, and the face of a movement that just proved it's ready to lead. So now we look ahead. The battleground has shifted, the rules have changed, and the next challenger, whoever they are, they better be ready. Because this time, there's no script, only truth. And the one who delivers it best wins. Make sure you're subscribed, click the notification bell, and comment below, who do you think Caroline's next opponent will be? Because if this story taught us anything, it's that the next viral showdown could be just one headline away. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay sharp, stay bold, and stay ready, because the next killer moment is coming.